This episode is brought to you in part by my loyal patrons. If you've ever wanted to directly support your favorite creative, then patreon.com is the place for you. I consider my patrons to be my small army of support, especially when I'm in need of extra bravery to keep doing what I do. Patreon has a very attainable mission to help every creator become sustainable. And for that, creatives everywhere are so grateful. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. In today's episode, we talk with Emily Rose, who is a best-selling author and breakup coach. I know her through a couple author groups I'm a part of, and I invited her here today because I am no fool. Breaking up is hard to do, and a lot of bravery is required for it. Emily Rose's mission is to help people to not wake up on their deathbed and ask, what did I just do with my life? Instead, asking the question, what am I doing with my life, in the present tense. That's what breakups are all about, and it doesn't matter what or who you're breaking up with. I'm looking forward to asking her opinion about all this and so much more, and hopefully getting some helpful advice for how to have bravery in the midst of breakups. Let's jump on in. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Emily. I love our little Emily powwow right now.
I know. Emily.
We should put an echo on the mic. Emily.
Right? That'd be great. So you are mid-relaunch of your awesome book.
As you very well know.
Yes, I do. I helped Emily with all of her, some graphic stuff and giving her some
pick quotes. Yeah. So awesome.
So tell me about how you started. Why did you decide to write this book? And what is it about?
Glad I have a copy right next to me right now. Why did I decide to write the book? Well, I had a 5-month coaching package that over the course of 5 months, people would come into my program disillusioned with relationships, finding themselves, repeating the same relationship patterns. I mostly work with women. I do work with some men, but the women, mostly women, would come in and they would know that they would watch themselves repeating these habits in relationship where they were continually breaking hearts or being heartbroken, and or just always kind of like relationship hopping, going from one relationship to the next really quick without spending time in between. And oftentimes these women were also very unhappy in their jobs, not making enough money, or had bigger dreams of traveling or living a different lifestyle, like a higher caliber lifestyle. And so these women would come into my program with these issues going on. And by the time they would leave at 5 months, oftentimes they would be in new careers. They would have doubled their pay, living on tropical islands, broke up with boyfriends and other kinds of friendships and relationships that were draining the life out of them, like taking them down, and purging themselves of toxic relationships and healing familial relationships. And just the impact that this 5-month program that I created had was so transformative and powerful. And it was just always very humbling and beautiful to watch this transformation happen over these months. And so I was like, okay, well, how can I get this to more people at once for a cheap price, basically? And the book was the way to do that. And so I took the essence of the 5-month program. I took the relationship aspect of it because, of course, it did deal with other life stuff, like I said, around career and living location and things like that. But I took the relationship aspect of it and I put it into this book. And so what you have here is Break Your Bad Love Habits, 5 steps to free yourself from heartbreak and transform your relationships forever. And so the 5 steps in the book are based off of the 5 months from the program. And so it was just a way to be able to help more people at once and make the material much more accessible. It comes with a free workbook that's downloadable, and the workbook material is, again, drawn from that program. So it's just kind of like a little slice of that 5-month program.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of bravery, just in general. One, to put out a book in and of itself. 2, to make all of those changes that you were talking about. So you're pretty much witness to all of your clients' big acts of bravery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's based off of, I created the 5-month program based off of my own transformational experience, and over the course of, I think it was like 8 years. So basically it was like 8 years of me going through a lot of transformation, going through different practices and healings and everything. And I took that 8-year journey and I pulled all these pieces from it. Like, what did I do here? What did I do here? What are the lessons I took from here? How do I put this into something that someone else can utilize? And so, yeah, I took those 8 years and I put it into 5 months and was like, okay, here we go. So yeah,
what do you think breakups and bravery have in common?
Interesting. Well, I think of bravery and courage as something very similar. And so
they are synonyms. I looked it up in the dictionary the other day because I would need to do that.
Yeah.
And awesome. They're pretty much just the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. Because I would say that it takes a lot of courage to go through a breakup when you know that the breakup is for your highest purpose. And if it's for your highest purpose, it's also for the person's highest purpose that you're with, which is jumping a little ahead a bit to one of the questions that was asked on the Facebook.
I know. So we share a lot of mutual friends just because we do. And before I have a guest on, I always ask Facebook and other social media what questions they have for the guest. And so 2 questions, they're actually pretty related. One was from Amber and one was from Brittany. Amber asked, how do you reconcile leaving someone who you know is no longer serving your higher good when you know that leaving them will completely derail their life?
And that is totally the question I was just sort of talking about and answering. Yeah. If you know it's for your highest good and you're called to make that choice, 1, it definitely takes courage, but 2, you also need to know that that is in service to them as well. Because it's pretty typical, knowledge that if you're not able to, it's not fair to the other person, right, to stay in a relationship if you're not fully in it and all of that. But on a deeper level, it's still painful. And she says, we know it's going to derail their life. Because that's definitely how it feels in those moments. So you can tell yourself those kind of cliches all you want, but facing the reality of like watching yourself obliterate someone else doesn't feel like it's in their highest, for their highest good at that moment either. But it really, you do need to come back to the knowing that it is. And I mean, it definitely goes into that spiritual space of trusting that while you may not know how this is serving them, it is. And it's part of their journey to experience this breakup. Now that is, of course, if you are moving in alignment with your higher knowing in making that decision. And oftentimes, when relationships get to a point where both people are suffering to a certain degree, you do know kind of deep down that this is in service to them as well. And whenever we honor ourselves out of a place of like self-acceptance and self-love, we do the world around us a service. And that means speaking to hard truths, no matter the situation, whether we're talking about relationships or beyond. And one thing I do want to say also about breakups is that I don't want to speak as if they are always necessary or ever necessary. I mean, nothing is, I guess, staying in a relationship is always a choice and leaving a relationship is always a choice. And these are two different choices. There's no right or wrong. And we get really caught up in this idea that one is going to be the right choice and one is going to be the wrong choice. And nothing is...
On this point, I'm going to interrupt you because it's pretty good. One of my good friends, her wedding vows were not, I choose you for the rest of my life. Her wedding vow was, I choose to make the choice between you and not you for the rest of my life.
Wow.
I know. I know. I was sitting in the audience of this wedding and was like, oh my gosh, that's marriage.
Yeah, because it is a choice.
That's a relationship in and of itself. Like every day you have a relationship with someone and every day you don't have a relationship with someone, it's a choice. You just made the choice.
Well, and it's also, I mean, I love that because marriage can be a default choice. Like if we set it up as if, and this is coming from someone who's not married, by the way, but like
I'm not married either. So.
Right. Marriage, if you make that commitment for the rest of your life, kind of blinders on, you can default into that commitment rather than wake up every day choosing that relationship. And it kind of takes the power away from your choice. Now, it could also liberate you from constantly making a choice. And that could be, helpful for your spiritual progression as well. It just depends, I think. And I would guess that it's an ebb and flow throughout the marriage, if it was a long marriage, at least, that there's probably fluctuation in like, how much is nice and easy to stay in and how much is like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm really going to choose to work on this and be in it,
Well, I think relationships, like everything else, are just a series of choices. And it doesn't matter really what relationship we're talking about, like whether it's a work relationship or a personal relationship.
Or a relationship to yourself, because ultimately all of the choices we make start with the choice that we make with ourselves and how we're going to talk to ourselves in our head and how we're going to feel about ourselves in our lives. So if we're choosing to be kind to ourselves and forgiving with ourselves and generous with ourselves and strong and empowered, then the choices we make with others in the world around us is going to reflect those similar qualities. So what I was going to say earlier was, that sometimes relationships get to a point where it feels impossible to go any further with the relationship. And while I am a breakup coach, so I definitely think it's super important. What I do is help people to remove these habits and patterns and distractions from their lives to go and live on purpose. And at the same time, it's not always about removing these things from our lives. It's about learning to live with them in harmony and in conjunction with moving forward. So what I wanted to say is that sometimes relationships seem impossible to move forward with, and it feels like breakup is the only option. And while I, definitely guide people in that way, it's also important to recognize nothing is impossible. And if you have two people genuinely, working on the relationship, everybody does go through hard times, and breaking up isn't always the solution.
Right.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to put that disclaimer in there. And at other times, breaking up is absolutely necessary for your own evolution in life and in spirit. And if you're the only one in the relationship that's, putting in the effort, then oftentimes that is a necessary step. So
yeah. I thought since we're both ladies on the
single ladies
on the market,
yeah.
I thought we would go through a couple, and I'm springing this on you, so you can totally deny this question if you'd like. I thought we would go through a couple like reasons why we've broken up with someone in the past.
Ooh, geez.
Why they've broken up with us. So I will start with one of my favorites.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
So in college, I was doing this like dating a guy back from home, and was, home with my family for the summer, and then came back to college, which was like 5 hours away. So we had like a month of like long distance, 5 hours away kind of thing. And this is before Facebook and got really big and everything. So it was all phone. And he was constantly basically demanding that I put down everything in my life every time we had a phone call. And there was this one time where I was with a friend, and he called up and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Da, da, da. And when I said, "Hey, I'm with somebody right now, I'll talk to you later," he immediately jumped into like actual whining. So I just said, "Okay, I'll call you back later." And I hung up the phone, and she just goes, "Oh, someone's getting dumped tonight."
Oh, gosh.
And that's what ended up happening. That was not my intention right away, but that is actually what ended up happening.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Whining is on my no list.
Yep. That's interesting that you say that, actually, because that is actually, I think, the main reason I would say that I would break up with someone, and that I have broken up with people, is the victim mentality.
Oh, yeah.
I have very low tolerance for the victim mentality. Yeah, like I said, we have a choice in how we deal with ourselves and our reality around us. And while I definitely, and I am an advocate of going into the shadow side and the tougher work at times, and going into dark spaces within the self so that you can reemerge into the light. That is all, that kind of process is taking responsibility for your process and growth and development. Whereas the victim mentality is just looking to blame your world outside yourself, not take responsibility for yourself, bitch and moan, and put it all over everyone else, just dump it everywhere else. And that stuff I really have no patience for in any relationship, really. I mean, I don't. So that would be why I have broken up with people in the past.
So you'd say definitely on the whining?
Yeah, definitely on the whining.
Ugh, I was just so astounded. It was one of those moments where I just was like, I cannot believe that you are as old as you are, and your voice sounds like this right now.
I know. And it's so funny because, like, of course, now the coach in me has to just flip it around and ask us to look in the mirror. Like, we called that in, right? And maybe when we first started dating this person or whatever, it wasn't that way. Maybe that person, was in a place of empowerment and in a really good space in their lives. And over time, that part of themselves crept in. So be it. But ultimately, that moment and that situation where you and I were both individually faced with someone in that whiny spot, that was to serve us as well.
I fully recognize that not only did I allow it to get to that point,
right,
but I chose that person up until that point.
Totally.
And somewhere in me, there was a victim. And I can definitely tell you that there was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's there for all of us. And it's a matter of, it's through our disillusionment or disgust or anger with other people that we're able to see those shadow parts of ourselves. Right. So really that watching this person, writhe and whine and have a hissy fit or whatever at, in their late 30s or whatever they are, it can gross you out and like be super icky feeling. And you're watching it and you're going, ew, what am I doing? Like, get me out of here. But really, like, also you're getting to see the part of yourself. There's a reason it's triggering you. There's a reason it's gross, and it's because it speaks to a part of you that either you used to, have as a more prevalent piece in your life, or, and that maybe you've like overcome, and it's just about a reminder, like recognizing, no, you know what, I am not that way anymore. And I don't want people in my life that way anymore, or it's a part that one wasn't recognizing and needs to see in someone else in order to like keep in check, himself.
So this brings up a good point. Andrew, the third person who had a question today, asked, what is the best way to break up with someone?
Yeah, that is
There are more parts to this question too, but I thought we would stop there for a second.
Okay.
The best way to break up with someone. When you've made the choice, you've already made the choice to do it.
I don't think, I honestly, I might be a breakup coach, but I don't think I have an answer to that. And it's only because there's not
Which is a real answer, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not one right way. I think, honesty is crucial. And at the same time, compassion is as well. And the way that I have chosen to break up in the past, is through owning my part in things. And so I think that for me, taking responsibility for my role in the development of the relationship and the demise of the relationship, and acknowledging the lessons that I've learned from the experience with this person, and emphasizing those things can create an amicable split, theoretically. But, the bottom line is that you need to do you in a breakup, because you have no control over how that person's going to respond to what you're saying. You could just act with integrity. So like whatever makes you feel like complete in the process. So if you go in and decide to just not share anything about it and just be like, we're done and that's it. Regardless, you can't determine how they're going to feel.
Of course.
So you got to make sure that you're acting for you in that, which I know I just said, and I just repeated myself. What I was going to say though, is that like the less information you give, or rather if you just say something like, we're done, and there's no explanation and no conversation, I don't think that's very fair either.
And we'll use personal examples since that's the way I'm feeling right now. I have been the recipient of that, where you're holding hands and then the very next second there's like, hey, we can't do this. I made the choice to do this. And then as the person who's been broken up with, you're left going like, well, it takes two to tango. Were you ever going to talk to me about this and like let me in on this process? No, clearly not. And it's too late, which is a sucky feeling.
Right. So you're talking about like someone deciding without you that the relationship is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like they had gone on this whole journey without me. And that was the worst part of the breakup, was that I was left out of the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting.
Or at least some of the process. Right. I recognize that when it comes to breakups, it is your choice. Like you do have to own it, but it does really suck when someone leaves you out of the whole thing.
Yeah. That's just a lack of communication, 100%.
Well, I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that. So for that reason, I'm grateful that he broke up with me, but
right. Silver linings.
Right? So you're talking about like the level of vulnerability that you choose
through the breakup process.
Right.
So through the breakup conversation, even I think like what I was trying to get at is through the breakup conversation, you don't want to share like zero, you don't want to withhold everything and just be like, look, it's just over. It's not you, it's me. And that's it. And not say anything, because that's just not fair. It doesn't give any closure. It's actually it's kind of manipulative, because it leaves you in this like power position, whereas the other person's left just feeling like, well, what did I do? Or what could I have done? Or why did this end? Or so many questions could go through the mind, So to clue the person that you're breaking up with in on your process is important, and without pointing fingers. And that's really what I'm trying to emphasize here, is like taking ownership of your process, figuring out enough lessons that you could safely share. And again, like letting go of attachment to how they're going to respond to that. So it's really just about being self-aware and willing to expose some of your inner thoughts and feelings around the relationship. And
would you
not
say that it would be beneficial to, like, say I'm dating a guy and I'm decided I'm going to break up with him. Is it best to go through all of this and like decide for myself, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how vulnerable am I going to allow myself to feel?
What do you mean?
So let's take an imaginary example. I'm dating a guy and it's not going well for whatever reason. And I know that on Tuesday, I'm going to have a conversation with him where I'm going to have to end the relationship.
Okay.
Knowing that I've already made that decision, is it a good idea to, before the conversation starts, make a decision to allow myself to be vulnerable or not, like on a scale of like 1 to 10?
I mean, I guess like, again, that just goes back to where you are in your own power, how safe you can feel in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I have protected myself in pretty recent breakup that could have blown up and become a lot of chaos and drama. I knew what needed to happen. I knew I needed to break up with this person. I also knew that they might freak out. And so the best thing I could do was just be very set in my determination that we're breaking up, and very clear and not wavering, no asking permission, no letting them think that they could have done something else or could do something else to change my mind. Really, really owning the breakup being mine for me, because there's nothing anybody can say then to try to manipulate you back into the relationship. And so in that case, I would say that I was being vulnerable with myself, but not with him. And that was for the safety, like my own emotional safety in that process.
Right.
Whereas with someone that I was like my best friend and partner for 4 years, who, we stayed close afterwards and everything, like with him, when we broke up, we're crying together. Like we can be totally vulnerable and open together because we're still, in love, but like weren't functioning as a relationship. So it really just depends on what kind of relationship you have with that person and with yourself at that time. So. Yeah.
Before we get back to the conversation, I have just got to tell you about this awesome group of people I am honored to call my patrons. Every time a new song of mine is born, the first recording of it is tenderly revealed to this devoted group. They get to hear all my new material in its raw, fresh, vulnerable state and know that they are helping me do what I do. Because at the end of the day, they just want me to keep doing what I'm doing, and any reminder of that completely floors me every time I think about it. All of this support occurs through a website called patreon.com, which was started by this guy named Jack Conti, whose very attainable mission is to help every creator achieve sustainable income. In a world where artists are seen scrambling for pennies squeezed out of an expiring and broken economic system, the folks at Patreon have brought us back to what all creators used to do. Patronage is not new, but unlike a lot of popular crowdfunding sites out there, Patreon enables creators to receive support on a regular basis. The great thing is that my patrons set their pledges to whatever amount they feel comfortable with, which means patronage fits every budget out there. And of course, you can cancel at any time. If you're a creative type who's interested in joining Patreon yourself, I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. Just shoot me an email anytime. Bottom line, my patrons help me do everything I do, but better and more frequently. If you're interested in becoming a patron of mine, go to barenakedbravery.com/Patreon, Patreon. Our mutual friend Brittany asked, how do you move on when you know the relationship is over but still feel emotionally attached to the person? And you just brought up that point, like you're breaking up with somebody, but you still love them.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's a journey, man. And I think move on it's a broad question, and
Totally.
right? Because you can move on with your life, you can move on with relationships, and yet at the same time, you may always hold that person in your heart to a certain degree. And that's okay, as long as it's not stopping you from your growth experience.
Have you or your clients done a creative job of making the most of that connection remaining after a breakup?
Huh.
Cheesy example would be a scrapbook. you
Oh,
know,
interesting. Okay. I don't know. I've never really thought of it that way. I think.
because if you're going through an amicable breakup, it makes sense to not. I mean, there are some sort of situations where you do really need to cut them completely.
Well, okay. So in that way, then yes, I would say that with this, particularly with my ex-boyfriend of 4 years, we had a really creative solution to creating safety around the breakup, allowing ourselves to move on and move forward, but while maintaining a connection and a relationship, which was what we did was we decided to part ways, and then in order to create safety around that, we would it was really cool and it worked really well. We set these check-in dates. So the first one, I think we decided to give ourselves, I think it was 30 days. So we broke up and, we created this agreement that for 30 days, like on this date, whatever the date was, we would have like a FaceTime call. But before that, we wouldn't communicate, so that one of us wasn't waiting around for a text message from the other, or, you're just doing your daily life and all of a sudden you see their name pop up on your screen. You're like, and you get like that heart jump, or whatever it is, right? That was awesome because you didn't have any of that happening during those 30 days. We just knew that in 30 days we would reconnect. And then on that conversation, it had gone so well that we decided to do another one of those. I think we did another 30 days out. And then after that, we did like 2 weeks out. And then we started talking more regularly again because we were able to reestablish kind of our independent selves, in that time apart, and yet also continue a deep friendship. And so it was it was a great way to kind of ease out of that relationship and create feelings of safety during that process.
That's really good. I like that idea so much because there's been, even with friendships, like friendship breakups or a job breakup, where like you're going about your daily life and then all of a sudden you get an email or a text and it completely
derails you.
It's awful. And it's not like, if you leave that connection or if you leave that window open, of course they have the right to do that. But at the same time, it doesn't. Oh, it feels so unfair to have your day stripped from you like that.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden, it doesn't even matter what emotional status you guys left it in. It's just all of a sudden they're in your head and they're in your life for the rest of the day or for at least a few hours or whatever it is, right? Because then there's the pressure to respond or whatever, and all of a sudden they become part of your day. And you're like, wait a minute, I didn't invite you into my day. I was having a great day before this. And now you're here with me. And what do I do with that,
Yeah, it's rough. It's so rough. So that brings up a good point. So that's how you break up. That's a good creative way to break up with a romantic relationship. But how would you encourage someone to break up with a job that they hate or a job that is not doing what it needs to be doing for them?
Yeah. Well, that's like a big question because it depends on what all's going on in that person's life. If, if their dream job is all they have to do is spin their little chair and it's right there, then just leave and go and do this other thing, But if it involves 6 months of unemployment to pursue your passions and your dreams, or 2 years of unemployment, then don't just leave your job. And, so in the meantime, figure out something else that you like to do, because I guess it's a hard.
Let's say somebody has already made the choice to do it and they're going to do it. They're going to leave their job. How do you talk with your boss about leaving it? how do you give your 2 weeks or month long notice that your contract's going to be up and you're not going to resign? How do you say goodbye to your coworkers? How do you end well, basically?
I think the same principles apply. I think it's about knowing what the lessons are for you in that and being able to communicate them. And on that note, Allison Sigmund has an awesome book out on this called Delivering Bad News in Good Ways. And it has to do with understanding the communication style of your higher up that you're going to be breaking up with in this sense. So, and then
I'm glad you mentioned Allison, because she's going to be on the podcast later.
Oh, awesome.
So awesome.
And this would be a good question for her. Because when it comes to talking, to superiors in a work environment, I think she has some really tangible communication strategies that are awesome on this topic for sure. Yeah. My specialty is more in kind of where I was going with it originally, which is identifying what it is that lights you up in life and how to get there.
Yeah.
Because I think that when you do that, regardless if you're talking about a romantic relationship or a career, when you find out where your passion is and what fires you up, then breaking up with a job or with anything becomes easier because you're focused on what's coming next. And Amber Brogley, who I really hope is on this podcast at some point because she's freaking fabulous. And I will listen to her talk about bravery all day long. Love that girl. But what she has said to me a handful of times recently, which I love, is, the more that you know yourself and what you want in the world for yourself, for your life, the easier it is to just be like, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, that is it, that's not it, that's not it, that is it, kind of a thing. And then just like get rid of the stuff that's not it. And if that job isn't it, then it doesn't need to be convoluted and complex and emotional and all this stuff. I mean, maybe it has these elements to it, but it really doesn't need to if you're super clear on who you are and what you want. So
I agree. How have you, specifically you, not just your clients, but how have you discovered who you are?
How have I discovered who I am? Whew. Wow.
I'm asking the big ones today.
I know. Well, I mean, I think it's a constant journey of self-discovery. I'm always growing. And so I'm always discovering more about who I am and how I am in this world. And I plan on doing that until I'm no longer in this body. But I think back in 2007, I went through a heartbreak. I had handfuls of heartbreaks through my younger years, and I had broken enough hearts as well. And in 2007, I got like my heart obliterated. I was just down and out. Like I was super, super in love with this guy, and he broke up with me. He was my best friend, and we're still close actually. But like, I just got demolished, and I'm just like laying face down on the floor one day, bawling my eyes out. And I just was like, I had this kind of resolute, like, how the hell do I never feel this way again? How do I get to the point where I never have to feel this way again? And from that moment on, I started studying relationships and spirituality, and I started walking, a path of self-discovery and self-acceptance. And so I guess how I've figured out who I am, I think that was the question, is they're getting really honest, like with myself about and looking in the mirrors around me. So like I was talking about earlier, the way that people around us show us who we are. So when we are triggered by someone, in a negative way, that's just a reflection on what's going on for us in our shadow selves. And at the same time, that applies to the positive. So when we see, when I look at you, Emily Ann, and I see your freaking beautiful spirit and your creative self and your ambitious self, I get to look in the mirror of myself in those ways as well. And I get to appreciate those things about myself while appreciating them about you. And so everyone, what we see in others, what we love or what we don't like, is all a reflection of what we love or don't like about ourselves. And when we want to get really honest with ourselves, our best and most valuable teachers are the people that are kind of hardest to be around. And frankly, romantic relationships are a total lesson in this, because it gets really hard to be around our partners sometimes. And that's really where the juice of self-discovery can be. So
it's true. Like the grit.
Yeah.
Like, not everything has to be easy. And sometimes the grittiness, the gritty parts of life are the things that teach us the most about ourselves.
Yes. And you know, the whole breaking up thing is like a sort of a journey in figuring out when that grit is serving us and to what extent it is. And then when it starts to stifle us and stop us in our paths. And when that happens, it's time to bounce, you know, or transform the relationship if that's possible.
Right.
You know, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the courage that it takes to get to that point of breaking up. So not so much like the tactical aspect of breaking up, but the spirit and drive that it takes and the strength that it takes to go through a breakup with whatever, you know, whether that's a romantic relationship, a friend, even a family member, or a job, or a lifestyle, you know, maybe a living situation. I just moved from Northern California out to Austin, Texas. And in that, I broke up with a lifestyle and a living situation, you know. So when we're talking about bravery, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't start this conversation around courage and exiting life situations that are no longer serving you. And so I think one of the things that I am, you know, what I do and what I love doing is helping people find that kind of that thread of light that begins within themselves, their fire, their spirit, and is reflected into what they feel they're here to achieve and accomplish. And so when we can like identify what it is that brings us joy, that makes us feel alive, that makes us want to thrive and is excited to get out of bed in the morning and move forward in life, then we're more apt to move forward and move out of the things, out of the muck, out of the stuff that's holding us down or holding us back, and break up, break down, and break free from all of that stuff, you know. And
when you're in the thick of it and everything feels blurry because you're crying so hard, where does the thread of light come from and how do you find it? I know I'm going back to the tactical and we were talking about non-tactical things, but
well, what you're talking about is, you know, there's a quote that says we either change from a point of desperation or from a point of inspiration. And I mean, yeah, sure. Sometimes maybe we do need to get to that point of desperation. And that's what I think what you're referring to. And what I'm referring to is helping people to find that inspiration to move forward and break free. And
I think there needs to be a balance of both of those. You are inspired to move forward from something, and the inspiration usually comes from some sort of
dissatisfaction,
lack of satisfaction, or satisfaction, or a desire.
I agree. Yeah, my dad used to say, like, make sure that you're moving towards something, not away from something. And for years and years and years, I took that to heart, and I would always make sure that that's what I was doing. And then one day I was like, you know what? That's not really legitimate, because if you're moving towards something, that just means you're moving away from something else too. So, so it really is both. But I think the point is that you're not just running away without a direction, you know, or unconsciously kind of flailing through, you know, into the future. And I'm not saying everything needs to be planned by any means, but rather that hopefully there's been a sense of discovery around what is going to bring you joy and inspiration, and that you can tune in to that direction and follow that intuition.
Yeah. So I've just been taking notes here.
Awesome.
During our conversation.
Awesome.
Quietly, hopefully. So some of the things that you've talked about that are required for a really great breakup are honesty, compassion, ownership and responsibility, doing you, letting go of attachment, clarity, safety, and being guided by inspiration.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Ta-da. You did it. You're the one that said it.
It's so true.
So, well,
those points are so true.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
They really, really are. And I think it's a really brave thing to break up with anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a brave thing to even acknowledge that you need to break up with something.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the doing it. Like, let's leave aside the doing it. It's really brave to come to that acknowledgement of, oh, things are not the way that I want them to be right now,
Yeah.
or things are not the way that they could be.
And in that, I'm sure that through your conversations around bravery, it's going to come up a lot that to be brave and to be courageous and to be strong is to be vulnerable. And, that laying face down on the floor crying can be, if you're wallowing in self-pity, then yeah, that's probably not very much strength. But if you're processing emotion and you're using these experiences to move yourself through a hard time, allowing the emotion to move through, there is strength in that. And there's strength in vulnerability. And just quick note on this, on vulnerability doesn't, sometimes I think that we think of it as being vulnerable with the world outside of us, but that's not, sometimes the strength is just being vulnerable with ourselves. And that doesn't always mean that we need to show the world our process. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes vulnerability is being soft and tender with ourselves and standing strong in the world. And sometimes it means being soft and tender with the world. So,
right. I think that's how it ties back to that point of safety. Like you have to decide for yourself what is safe in whatever conversation or relationship you're having. And how do you maintain that vulnerability that's going to exist whether you like it or not? Where are those safety measures set up for yourself? And that's how I feel vulnerable, is when I know that the safety measures are there.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I like to talk about like to help, not just talk about, but actually one of the biggest things that I help my clients achieve is trusting yourself to have your own back, is the way I phrase it. It's learning how to trust yourself to do right by you. And even when that means that's something that's hard to do, I think that we look to others a lot to have our backs in life and in love. And really it's not anybody else's job but our own. And when we trust ourselves to have our own backs, to make the decisions, the choices that are sometimes easy, sometimes difficult, all over the place, but just that are right for ourselves in a moment, honoring who we are and our authenticity, then we create the safety to be all of us at once, all of oneself. There's safety in trusting yourself.
Yeah, I agree. That is all. Oh man, this has been so great. And I don't want to take up any more of your time, even though I've loved every second of it.
Awesome. Well, I have too.
Well, okay. So I'm going to make that lovely little list of breakup tips and tricks and make it all pretty and put it on a PDF for you to download. You can download that on barenakedbravery.com. And also on that little list, Emily Rose has some gifts for you, one of which is the audiobook and the workbook for her book, Break Your Bad Love Habits. So you can download that via barenakedbravery.com and just search for Emily Rose. But her website is emilyrosecoaching.com, and she's on Amazon, and she's on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of those good things. So thank you so much, Emily, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. We'll want you back.
Sure. I'd love to come back.
Okay, good. Great. Okay, so beyond the Bare Naked Bravery adult coloring book, which is always free for you to download, your brave takeaway from today's show with Emily Rose is 8 ingredients for brave breakups. Honesty, compassion, ownership, doing you, letting go, clarity, safety, and being guided by inspiration. I've put all 8 of those onto a printable note card size download for you to put on your refrigerator or mirror for those times when you need a little extra bravery during a season of breaking up. We'd love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery show. You can find Emily Rose and myself, Emily Ann Peterson, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. Go ahead and tag us so we can cheer you on and see what you're up to. And that's our show for the week. Thank you for listening. Again, we've put all the links in the show notes for today's episode, so just be sure to visit us online for all of that. Go to barenakedbravery.com. And if you've enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we have enjoyed making it for you, please give us a review and rate the show in your iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. It helps us out a lot more than it is a hassle for you. It takes between 2 and 45 seconds. All of the bravery that you hear on this show, in this episode and in episodes to come, it deserves to be spread as far and wide as possible. And your reviews really, really, really do help us out. And you're definitely a part of that. So speaking of things you're a part of, the Bare Naked Bravery show has an adult coloring book, which is so cool. And it features over 20 designs from talented visual artists of all kinds from all over the world. This means you can make the art from a fellow Bare Naked Bravery listener come to life while you listen to next week's show. We would love for you to post your finished pages on Instagram so that we can all admire the many shades of your bravery. Download the whole thing for free, like I mentioned, or purchase the paperback version by visiting barenakedbravery.com/color. Not only that, but everyone involved in making this coloring book wants you to vote for 4 of your favorite brave charities to receive the proceeds from the coloring book, which is so generous and so wonderful. Again, just visit barenakedbravery.com/color for all of that information. If you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. To find out more about all the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, please visit barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm looking forward to being with you next week so much. We have some great things in store for you, and until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.